Bitcoin is in the process of bringing about a fundamental and an unstoppable evolution of our society. The separation of money and state. In this video, I want to unpack for you just why money and state actually need to be separated and why Bitcoin is so damn well suited to fulfill the role. So let's jump into today's topic. The idea of money and state. Just think of it, guys. Money issued by your government. It seems like something that's so normal, as natural as breathing, something which has been programmed into us since we were children. And yet, the more that you actually learn about the central banking system and the fiat currency system, the way in which governments and banks collude to rob you of your wealth via inflation and things like this, you can really end up feeling like you're living in some kind of matrix. And the more that you continue to research the topic, the more unease you feel as you realize that you're like Alice falling down the rabbit hole of insanity. The harsh truth is that you are not in control of your money. Your dollars, your euros, your pounds, your pesos, your yen, whatever your fiat is, your government controls that money. You do not set the monetary policy. You do not control inflation. Heck, you're not even guaranteed access to your bank accounts if they decide you're shut off. Bitcoin is the wake-up call to all of this. Now, it may be hard to explain to those who are still caught in the matrix, but we feel it. We know it. We know there's something wrong with this system. The illusion of fiat and the illusion of its value pervades every moment of our life, from work to church to taxes. The illusion of fiat has blinded us to the reality of what our modern money is, that we have become slaves to a monetary system which exploits and crushes humanity. We have all been born into fiat bondage, bonded to broken money, bonded to exploitative tax systems, bonded to a world run by banks too big to fail. Increasingly, though, people are starting to unplug from this matrix, and they are realizing that their money can exist without their government. Bitcoin is the red pill to the outdated, exploitative, and fundamentally broken debt-based banking system. Your paper money, it is not worth anything. The only thing keeping it alive is a belief that the numbers on that piece of paper have a certain purchasing power and that someone else will also believe in that number in the same way that you perceive it. There is a reason that we have spent a lifetime looking at money with pictures of dead leaders and national monuments on it. It all reinforces the idea that there is power and the state which is backing the value of that piece of paper. And obviously to reinforce the authority and the perception of authority of the state over money. Now, going back in time, obviously gold has historically worked at the separation of money and state to some extent, since up until the creation of Bitcoin, it was the only real competitor to the fiat Ponzi system. And yet, of course, history is filled with examples of leaders stamping their faces onto gold coins. But largely, gold was gold. One gold here was as good as another gold there. That is, of course, until leaders started getting greedy and minting coins with smaller amounts of gold and silver in them. The original inflation or debasing of currencies. But gold has not been functional money for an incredibly long time. And currently it has almost no use as money. Store of value, yes. Money, not really. As a safe haven for investment, also cool. But just go and try to pay for anything in gold anywhere. Not really going to work for you. Or try to send large amounts of gold to the other side of the planet in minutes. Also not really going to work, guys. Well, gold still has its uses, and obviously it is incredibly popular amongst a certain crowd of investors. It cannot compete with Bitcoin. Bitcoin, by the way, has 1/50th of the market cap of gold currently. It's crazy to think about. Now that moves us a bit forward to the point where back in the past, someone had the grand idea to make these kind of promissory notes, pieces of paper backed by gold, which you could redeem for gold at some point. Then someone had the even more brilliant idea, hey guys, let's forget about that whole gold thing and just give out pieces of paper backed by nothing but the threat of violence anyway. Then, of course, they even stopped printing a lot of the money. Now they just give it out digitally and directly to major commercial banks to give back to you. It steals from multiple times along the process. The crazy thing is that unlike a commodity such as gold or silver, which, they're useful, for example, in making computer chips, fiat currencies don't have any intrinsic value. They're simply backed by the full faith and credit of the government that issued them. Really? What the duck does that even mean, guys? Literally, backed by faith. Faith in corrupt institutions and greedy banks. That's some bad faith to be backed by. Or you can choose provable, transparent math and code. I know which one seems more interesting to me. At its core, the fiat system is one of violence and of oppression which serves to protect the power of the state and the power of the elites. Take the power of money issuance away from the state. And then, of course, the states must actually live within their means. They cannot simply endlessly print money to start new wars, for example. They can't print money to prop up failing banks, which are too big to fail. Or, of course, print more money and give it to their buddies or to themselves. Government in the 21st century should have no hand in the creation of money. Corrupt and largely inept governments, however, sadly, do influence currency, and they do influence taxes. Far too much, actually, which is dangerous to regular humans. Sure, every once in a while, someone who is not a total asshat gets into power, but the trend is mostly towards asshattery, because those non-asshats are few and far between. Now, the overwhelming trend has been towards more dominion of the state over humanity via money. One of the most devious ways that this is done is via inflating currency, which basically is a way to tax citizens again and again and again and again on money that you have already earned. Everyone's money loses value when governments and central banks print more money and create inflation. But the government and their banking buddies, they get the monetary benefit of spending the money which they printed before you can get your hands on it, before the effects of the inflation which they're actually creating have taken place. Now, even in my short lifetime, I have seen the power of a dollar change significantly. As an example, let's just say that my dad put aside $10,000 for me when I was born. And he intended to give that money to me when I was 25. Well, then if that was the case, it would only have a purchasing power of around $5,000 on my 25th birthday. It would have lost half of its purchasing power in that time. Now, if I got that money when I was 25 and I took it and put it under my mattress after my dad gave it to me, then the purchasing power of those bills today would be around $3,200. That is 138% inflation, which I have seen on the US dollar in my own lifetime. Now, you might say, but well, why didn't your dad just put it in a bank and get like 1% interest per year? Look, there are a million reasons why people don't want to put money in the banks, and they're all good reasons. And the laughable interest rates that banks pay out, they really don't serve as an amazing incentive to put all your money in the bank, guys. So I understand why people don't. And because we're talking about massive value here, the timeline is kind of slow, but this discrete robbery via inflation is real. And it's very apparent when we look at an example like the one that I've just given you here. You see, if the government doesn't control the production of currency, then in theory anyway, a government will have a much, much harder time to live beyond their means. They'll not be able to overspend. They'll have to live within their budget. The reasons for governments intentionally raising or limiting the amount of money in circulation is often done with noble intent, right? To stimulate investment or spending or to generate jobs or avoid out of control inflation or to avoid recession. That all, in theory, sounds reasonable, right? But in practice, it is often terrible due to either the total incompetency or the criminal intent of those who are printing the money. Then we have fractional reserve banking, which is rampant and irresponsible beyond belief. We have the debt system, which is creating an entire generation of debt slaves beholden to the banking system. We have got to separate money and state, just in the same way that we had a separation of church and state, which was a fundamental milestone for so many nations. We now look at, for example, these theocratic countries that still exist as being completely out of step with the times or completely backwards and unmodern. Although, of course, I do find it funny that Jesus kicked the money lenders out of the temple. Not the poor, not the immigrants, not the diseased. The money lenders, guys. Well, you know what? Those frickin' money lenders, you know what they did? The money lenders, they came back. They built new temples. Those new money lending temples, they're called banks. And they have declared themselves the high priests of the religion of fiat. You know, in the future when they teach children about the separation of money and state, those children will probably find it really strange the governments once controlled money and issued out pieces of paper with dead people's faces on them. It will seem as quaint as we see the church running our governments now. And it'll seem even crazier that wars were fought to ensure that one piece of paper remained the number one over the others. And yet the idea of separating money and state is far from the collective consciousness nowadays, which is unfortunately crazy because money is as fundamental to our lives as spirituality and religion might be. I would argue that maybe even more so, because it affects almost every aspect of our life. And to many people, money has actually become something of a religion. They worship false idols, the idols of fiat. And yeah, fiat's kind of like a religion, guys. One so deeply ingrained in our society that most people are unaware that this web of lies and deceit even exists. But it does. And like God striking you down with lightning, you have zero control over the fate of your local fiat currency's monetary policy. Central banks, they just do what they want. The bankers, they call the shots. The bankers choose the governments, guys. It's crazy. You guys remember back when Citigroup chose Obama's entire first cabinet? That happened. Tells you who's in charge, doesn't it? And newsflash, guys, it's not you. It's not me. To quote the late, great George Carlin, it's a big club, and you ain't in it. The banks want to inflate. They want to tax you more. They want to give money to their buddies. They want to give more tax breaks to their buddies, more subsidies to their buddies. It is a broken and corrupt system. They do what they want. They control the money, and they own you because they own your money, or at least they think they own you. Now, in the same way that you must be allowed to freely believe in whatever God that you want, you should be able to choose whatever money you want. And in a free market, the dollar, the euro, the peso, the rand, the yen, all these things, none of them are winners. Buying, owning, and holding Bitcoin is one of the only things that firmly gives you control over your financial destiny. Bitcoin is the free market of money. Fiat is the money of nepotism and oppression. The dollar is unfortunately the ultimate unholy wedding of money and state, but it is not to be unexpected, I guess, since the country with the strongest military has historically, of course, forced their national money system onto the rest of the world, as we see has happened here. And now, even the dollar itself has been turned into a weapon. Financial sanctions, or simply the threat of being cut off from the US-dominated order, are regularly used in order to coerce desired behavior from both friend and foe alike. Now, this is actually currently leading to an explosion of alternative systems which are controlled by Europe and China and Russia, their own kind of SWIFT networks, none of which I'm actually excited about because they're all still controlled by states. And then there is one which has no state backing it. Bitcoin. The world is changing at an unbelievable pace, guys, and the nation states currently, they are behind the curve big time. Bitcoin is currently well positioned to be the first currency to achieve global reserve status without having to fight a war to achieve it. The world is increasingly moving towards a borderless economy. No national currency should dominate the modern world system. Scarily, we are starting to see, of course, the attempt of corporations to create corporate money, right? Facebook Libra, as an example, it's an even unholier wedding of money than that of money and state, corporation and state. That's scary stuff, guys, because these are unaccountable, privacy invading corporations, and of course, they're going to continue to try and usurp the power of states and of individuals. We must not let them do that. And then, yeah, of course, the central banks, they're finally starting to catch on, and they're now discussing launching their own cryptocurrencies. But to be honest, guys, this only recreates the problem of state and money and moves us closer to a dystopian Big Brother nightmare. That is not what we want. A much brighter future would be things like maybe Bitcoin backed by stablecoins instead of some kind of central bank fiat coins, as an example. Because only truly global, decentralized money will free society from the clutches of the banking cartels. Trust in math, guys. Be brave enough to be your own bank. Bitcoin is well suited to do this. Welcome the separation of money and state. It might seem kind of scary when you think about it, but it is the future of our human society. No one currency owned by one state should rule the financial world. But a currency which has no state, has no borders, is available to every single person on the planet, that is powerful, man. It really, really is. And that is what is going to lead to the bloodless evolution of money. Anyway, just my two stories, guys. You will let me know what you think about the separation of money and state down below in the comment section. You guys, as always, totally freaking awesome. Seriously, I love you guys so much. So thank you so much for coming out and watching this video. If you did enjoy it, hit that thumbs up button. That'd be supremely awesome. Make sure to subscribe to the channel if you are new around here. Click that notification bell to know when I put out a new video. Long live the blockchain, and peace out till next time.